episode 15, Vision Denied, the last day of groups. I want to say rest in peace to every region except for 3. Spoilers. At least it's not such a sad telling at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Sebastian. I'm here joined by Josh, Connor.
Hello.
Yep. Hello.
We usually would say that we decided to buy a jersey from any minor region team or North American team or European team that made it out of groups, except for TSM, Fnatic, or G2, unless they made it to semis. But it's looking like we're not going to buy any jersey from the results of it.
Ooh,
Spoilers, I'll
boy.
go ahead with
Ooh.
Malloy. Ooh.
Why is that, Seb? Why?
We'll get there. We'll get there when we do the predictions at the end of the day.
Okay.
Sure.
So today's the Group D. We have what would have been usually a group that people would have been like, it's boring. Maybe there's an upset, but
Yeah,
no one's
insta
gonna
solved.
get it. We'll start it off with FlyQuest versus DRX being the first game of the day, which set the mood and completely red herring the mood. Take it away.
Yep.
So, on blue side, FlyQuest first picks a Graves followed by a Jin Ornn, and then they round out their draft with a Thresh Azir. DRX first pick on red side a Lilia Senna followed by a Jace, and then they follow up their draft with a Galio Pantheon. So DRX come swinging out the gate with like a semi-global comp, or no, actually that's pretty much considered global, I think, right? Pantheon.
It's semi-global.
Semi-global, okay, semi-global. Semi-global with 3 picks that can interact with people halfway across the map. It's pretty sick. Also, Ornn made it to 3rd pick, which is 4th pick, which is weird.
Yes.
Okay, but I think what we've seen this game is that Ornn is not Ornn just wins, right? It's not that level. Like we saw the Ornn we saw the weaknesses of the Ornn exploited in this game, right?
I don't know if that's necessarily the weaknesses of the Ornn that was exploited, because this is the thing that most teams do when the Ornn is a thing. What usually is the antithesis to this with teams that play to this pacing is that they usually have the rest of the map at a high pace, with the Ornn slowly catching up and still being like a utility machine to start engages. I don't think this is necessarily like a good example of showing why the priority of Ornn is so low. I think this is a good example of showing that a lot of the higher teams don't think games are going to go late.
I'm not saying it's not great. I'm saying perhaps it's not the strongest champion in existence.
I don't know about that. I think it's just because I think the teams don't expect their games to go past 30 minutes.
Okay.
Well,
and yet,
I mean, in this instance, it didn't.
In this instance, it didn't, right? And I think that's the takeaway from this is that they played in a way where they didn't want FlyQuest to get to that point. And FlyQuest did not respond appropriately, because teams that do have Ornn respond appropriately to make sure the Ornn can still get to that point and the rest of the team is not slacking behind, usually have the pace kept up, or they're in control of it. Yeah. Like the first thing I put here is that there was no level 1s.
Yeah. And I guess even looking at it, it's like Jin, not the strongest early per se, like strongest when he has a few items. Azir, again, not a strong early game, strongest when you have like those 3 items. Even Thresh is like, yes, you can land a hook and you have pick potential on Thresh early,
but you need the follow up.
But like stats wise, Thresh only gets like tanky per se, and does stuff like really late game per se.
I still found
their only early game option is the Graves per se, and
I still
Graves is not going to counter a whole team.
I still found it pretty weird that there was no level 1s from the side of DRX.
Yeah.
Right? For a team that was trying to keep up the pressure, and where I put like there's a 15-minute and 25-minute check where like those are the points
Uh-huh.
where either team has to be like ahead enough for it to count.
Mm-hmm. I also
There
feel
was no
like
level ones.
you win almost any invade with Senna Pantheon against that team comp. Like,
Yeah,
if the Senna and Pantheon are involved in the invade, I'm pretty sure you just win.
yeah, that's correct.
Um, well, in theory, Thresh starts Q. Jin can start root if he wants to, and then Grave starts Q, and you just CC someone and burst them. So
Yeah, but that's not as consistent as the
sure.
point and click stun
Oh,
into the root that goes through into the taunt.
Well, I'm
So
just
like,
saying, like, I'm coming more from the fact that like Pantheon empowered E, because I think Pantheon starts off empowered, does he not?
yes, he does.
Yeah, so Pantheon empowered E. E makes you auto
to
attack at
block
least
damage.
once or twice, I think. So E into 2 automatic autos, followed up with enough time, another auto, ignite. That's like half the health of someone at least. Then literally any other follow up, they're probably dead. Like it's not, you don't need like a
Yeah.
bunch of things to land, I think is more what I was just thinking, compared
Mm-hmm.
to like Thresh can Q someone, yes, but a Thresh Q does like maybe like 50 damage or something like that. Like it doesn't, like Thresh Q isn't damage. It's
90,
CC, but it's not damage. Same thing with like
96.
96. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
I
my
think
point
the, I
my
think
point was just that like Pantheon
I
is
play a lot of
damage
Thresh.
incarnate.
yeah
I play a lot of Thresh. I know the exact number.
Sorry, I play a lot of
the
Senna.
the level one I think was still the strength of DRX, and the fact that neither team prepared for a level one
Sure.
weirded
Yeah,
me out.
for
Like I think
sure.
that should have been the first thing, and then it was just like 5-man spread. Whoever wins this game is likely to get out of groups. That's because that's the feeling that I got out of this, and quite honestly, either one, whichever of these teams wins, does get out of groups
Mm-hmm.
from the rest of the results.
Hmm.
FlyQuest wins this game, they're out of groups. DRX wins this game, they're out of groups. And unfortunately, playing not to lose on the side from FlyQuest is mostly what did them in.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Because they started playing to win later on, and we'll get into those results later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Jin Thresh did stuff in the bottom lane a little bit, but
Yeah,
that's
like
about
they
it.
didn't get like rolled necessarily. Like
Mhm.
everyone died a little bit, but like I don't think like anyone got like absolutely like destroyed.
Top
Like,
lane.
huh?
Top lane.
He only got 3 deaths though, so like I don't know. I
I think
don't
the point of Ornn is just to make sure that you're able to get experience and farm, and Solo
Mhm.
did that. I don't think
Mhm.
Ornn was ever behind in experience.
Sure, but the Jace was like two hitting people.
Yeah, but that means that the Jace was playing his job.
I guess. Yeah.
And I think the onus here comes from Santorin, who did not pressure the win condition.
Mhm.
mm,
Because Azir versus Galio is not going to go anywhere, and you don't want to give gold to your Azir. It's not necessarily going to add anything to the fight. The Thresh and Jhin down bot with Senna Pantheon is just going to be a back and forth, and you know that late game is your win condition. So like, you want to make sure that your Ornn is ahead of time, and you want to make sure that the Jace is not pressuring properly. And I didn't see any aggression from the side of FlyQuest in this game. There was a lot of Drake setup that was
mhm.
pretty solid from them, and I thought that was really impressive. FlyQuest's neutral game objective control in this game in this day is really good, but
Mhm.
DRX was really on the ball to punish anything that was like not their call in tempo.
Sure. Okay.
So I think like the onus here is that the jungle pressure was not appropriately allocated, and that they were not willing to pressure or try to like get more advantages than needed.
Sure. Yeah.
Granted, it's also because I'm assuming here Solo is not the strongest of the top laners in this entire world. Like he's fairly impressive compared to like what his competition is, but
Mhm.
him regularly playing losing side tells me that like, hey, this is fairly good.
Should we move on to the next game?
Yeah, there was not much more
Yep.
out of that.
Yeah. Unicorns of Love versus Top Esports.
Uh-huh.
Unsurprisingly, it goes to Top. We got Unicorns on the blue side, first picking a Lucian, followed up by a Lilia Nautilus. Then they round out their draft with a Wukong Ziggs. Ziggs goes bot. Top, they first pick a Syndra Ashe, followed up by a Graves, and then they pick Lulu Scion. The one thing I remember from this game, and I was like, good job. And I guess it makes sense considering it was coming from Top, is that I like how Top essentially, I guess the word is starved out the Ziggs in a sense. They were basically the way, because of how they got an early trade in, the Nautilus was now like under half health and couldn't properly engage anymore or threaten engages.
Mhm.
So
Mm-hmm.
Ash and Lulu were literally just able to like destroy Ziggs if ever he tried to use autos to last hit, meaning that he then had to use his Q to last hit, which meant that he had no more mana, which meant that he wasn't a threat anymore, which meant that they could be pushed in, and yeah. So I think that was like
I
really good.
mhm.
Like, I forget exactly now if the Nautilus going under half health was something that they tried to do or like a benefit off of a good trade that Jackie Love and I can never pronounce his name got.
Lamau.
Nope, that's not a support.
Oh yeah.
Um,
But no, you've got the vast majority of that. I think this is a subject of their draft decision.
Mm.
So UOL one, I think, is for some reason has shown more respect in this game than they have in any of their games ever, and I think it's a little too late and a little hilarious. But the fact of the matter is that they third picked a Nautilus without knowing what the bot lane duo was going to be, and that bit them in the butt. They first picked the Nautilus as a type of answer to a Cinder Graves. They were like, how do we guarantee things without like ever looking at the fact that no other engaged support was taken?
Mm-hmm.
And so the
yeah.
fact of the matter is that they picked the Lulu as a direct response to the Nautilus, and the lane played as expected. It didn't matter if the Ziggs or any other ADC was there. In fact, I think the Wukong Ziggs on the bottom half of this is like a solid pick out of them. It allowed them to have more sustained damage alongside the Lucian and the Lilia, and allowed them to also have a burst option. So I think it was a good
Wukong.
pick, but the Nautilus is not a great pick at this particular time. Um,
Mm.
I think there are better picks for these two, but I think given their play style, this was pretty good. Um, what I'm surprised by is that they top didn't try to show they could do a lane swap
Mhm.
because I think they would have starved out their um, their competition more doing that. But it didn't matter because they outclassed unicorns in every role.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was a show of
Dominance.
unicorns of absolute dominance, and like unicorns, you're not even tall enough to survive, let alone ride.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the notes I have here is you can basically just watch from about minute 13 to 15, and that's
Mhm.
about it. Like after that, I think they paused, and then the second they come back from the pause, people tend to have like strategies right after a pause. It's a weird thing you notice. Like there tends to be a lot of like, yeah, the second you come back from a pause, everything happens. I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but anyway, yeah, the second they come back from the pause, watch about 2 minutes, and then that's basically the game. Um, they go for I think it's a bot lane tower dive with the Graves, and Unicorns just probably tries about 8 times to kill the Graves, and just, dodges most everything and gets Lulu shielded
Mm-hmm.
4 separate times, and top walks away with like a 3 or 4 for O by the end of the 2-minute exchange, and you're like, well, that's game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is just mostly. I don't understand how this is even fair.
Yeah, and then at that point it's 10-1, and you're like, well, okay.
Yeah, honestly, in my opinion at least, I don't think there's too much more to say. It's kind of just a slap. It's kind of.
But I do want to use this game as a case study for the game that comes right after.
Yep.
Sure.
Because, and I kid you not, the same core concept on both sides applies. UOL picks the same core concept in their game against DRX, and DRX picks the same core concept, topped it against UOL. And this is a good way to juxtapose the absolute difference in strength that both teams have.
They did get a couple more kills though.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's one tank, a Lulu, the Orianna instead of the Syndra, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, both of Graves, and then it's Ashe versus Caitlyn, but
Yeah.
they're
Well,
still both sustained.
We'll finish. Let's get to that game then, really quick,
Oh.
since we're already talking about it.
Sure.
DRX versus Unicorns is the next game, hence the case study on Unicorns. DRX on blue side, they take it with a first pick Graves into a Orianna Caitlyn. Then they round out their draft with a Ornn Lulu. Unicorns first pick Lucian Lilia, followed by a Camille. And then they round out their draft with Ziggs Nautilus again. So they literally picked themselves into a poke lane again.
Yep.
And I think that's a little bit silly.
Yep.
That's basically all I'm going to say about this game. I think this game's kind of just like a, if you bash your head into the wall enough, blah blah blah. Like so.
So here's the difference though.
Say.
Top never gave an opportunity for UOL to play.
Mm-hmm.
DRX did. And I think that's a very big difference in terms of application.
Mm-hmm.
Because UOL got a Drake in this game. They did not get a Drake in the previous game.
I thought their first blood was really good. You'll notice, so at the beginning, I think it was, so Anonisic went over and warded, he went into the Dragon Pit and warded over the wall.
Mm-hmm.
So he warded down there. And then their mid laner warded the, like the bush beside mid lane, that's one of the entrances to the jungle. And someone in their bot lane warded like the second entrance to their jungle, like walking towards their blue buff. So basically, Piosik goes for the invade to try to steal away the blue buff, like, okay, cross map jungle play, and walks over 3 different wards. So they know exactly what he's doing. They're like, yeah, if we're playing cross map, he's probably going to go for this invade. They spot him when he's over the wall. They spot him walking into the jungle. They know exactly where he is. Well, he's either on the blue buff or the ground because, you know, he walked over the ward going into that jungle, and he hasn't left the jungle. So he's there, and then they collapse on it. It's like, I just thought it was really good use of vision. Like, putting the vision for the expected play, like the expected cross map, knowing that he's going into the Lilia.
Yeah. I think also a good comparison. So for both games, I said you put a 10 and 25 minute check. Comparing both games, the 10-minute mark, top has a 3K lead, DRX has a 500 gold lead. Right?
Yeah.
It shows a very huge difference in pacing. At 25 minutes, top has a 14K lead and ends the game, and DRX has an 8K lead and still takes more time to close the game out on compositional styles that are virtually the same.
Yeah. Who was casting? Was it LS?
Mm-hmm.
Say, this is the closest one-sided game ever.
Yes, exactly. And I don't think
they should have won so long ago.
Yep.
But UO got 2 Barons.
And yeah, DRX is like the most inconsistent neutral game setup that I've ever seen out of a team that's supposed to make quarterfinals. I have questions about three three of the 8 teams that made it to quarterfinals.
Other two being the European ones.
Yeah, DRX and the 2 European ones. Because their neutral game setup is literally what worries me the most. Less questions about G2, more questions about Fnatic and DRX. Because that's literally where most of the fights happen. This isn't one of those things where like you're just going to be randomly catching people out on a frequent basis.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be happening based off your neutral game setup or your vision game setup.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the most inconsistent that I've seen. You should not have had so much trouble with an 8K gold lead to close out the game.
I mean, but they are going up into really, really good wave clear at the very least, and it's always harder to close games against comps that have really, really good wave clear because they can
Sure,
prevent your siege.
sure.
It's something. It's worth
But
mentioning.
again, this is why I'm using this as a case study to compare it to the top game.
Yep.
Top game is playing against a comparatively equivalent composition, right? The composition that is on this side includes a Lucian, Lilia, Wukong, and Ziggs, and Nautilus. And in this composition, they have an Ashe, Lilia, wrong one. They have a Camille, Lucian, Lilia, Ziggs, Nautilus. Functionally, the exact same comp. It is functionally the exact same comp. You just have Wukong and Camille swapped out, which don't have a difference in terms of wave clear. So, Can I please understand DRX why you are supposed to have the same application of composition and yet don't apply it? I think DRX is an example of a team that is better than TSM but has the same underlying problems as TSM. They don't know how their compositions work.
You can see the top went for all the they went for the dives. The counter to like, okay, preventing Ziggs wave clear and stuff is like, okay, you can just dive towards the Ziggs and stuff, right? So we saw even the Ashe going in and just going like, yes, I'm gonna fight you under your tower, flash away from the last tower shot and win. Like doing that on Ashe, let alone, right? So like top will go for those plays, and those are the more high risk, high reward plays kind of thing. Whereas DRX didn't. They kind of let the Ziggs win.
See, this is the weird thing too. I'm mentioning this mostly because less about the even the stylistic choices, because this pops up in other DRX games. They don't know how their composition works. They seem to be picking just for power picks, and just hoping that they're slightly better on the day. I think this translates also to like how they played their year out. They have technically above the board better players bar for bar, but they don't.
And looking at that comp, they should have been able to dive. Ornn just tanks the tower, and they have double shields.
This is why I'm using this as a case study.
They should have been able to just go in.
UOL had functionally the same composition, and DRX had functionally the same composition that Top did. You can literally compare how much worse DRX is to Top Esports. And it concerns me when they're going to go up against Damwon again, where they're absolutely going to get dumpstered. That's about it. It's just, this is a good way to watch 2 games in a row and see exactly like the absolutely quality of difference between the two. And this shows you exactly why I'm so upset that Fly lost their first game, because the game after this,
we get to be happy for a moment.
We get to be happy, sure. But the game after this is FlyQuest versus Top. And like, no one expected this to go the way that it did in any even myriad of capacity even thought about. So,
but it wasn't like, it wasn't cheese. It wasn't like, oh, they did a crazy teleport base rush or anything like that. It's like, no. They played the game properly, and they won like fairly per se. Like.
So before we talk about that, Josh, take it away with the description.
The next game, Top Fnatic?
Yeah.
There you go.
Top Fly.
Top Fly, sorry. Top Fnatic. Oh, getting ahead of myself.
Yeah,
Yep.
a little bit.
Top versus FlyQuest, the game of the day. The boys bringing it back for the red, white, and blue. Top Esports on blue side, FlyQuest on red. The F is throwing me off. FlyQuest, take it home. Top first pick, a Graves, followed by a Caitlyn Lux bottom lane. And then they round out their draft in the second round with a Galio Urgot. FlyQuest do their draft with a first pick Lilia Ashe, followed up by a Blitzcrank in response to the Lux to the Lux Caitlyn. And then they pick Azir and, surprisingly, Gnar. Is this the first Gnar of the tournament?
Nope, we've seen
Nope.
In the plains.
Yes, but
Okay,
it was just
cool.
playing.
But like, my thing really quick is I love how Solo was able to absorb a decent amount of pressure, at least early. I know they got him a couple times later on with some 3 and 4 man ganks, but he survived the first 3-man gank or 2 pretty easily, which I thought was like amazing.
Yeah.
Especially considering this is FlyQuest and this is Solo versus Top, and like I'm not gonna say God, because like there's other good tops as well, but like 369 is a really good top laner. So like it's pretty cool, you know? It's pretty cool.
I gotta say though, this is turn the nameplates off
Mhm.
and say this is a top versus FlyQuest game.
Okay.
Top pick Gnar.
Top pick Gnar. Wow, that's interesting. And then you're like, wow, top really got something here, eh? And FlyQuest was trying to really cheese and think Urgot was some sort of cheese. I don't think this was meant to be cheese. I think this is like a little bit of styling, but top does this a little bit. But the Urgot is not like a bad pick in this situation. The Caitlyn Lux is not a bad pick. The Urgot helps initiate some form of engage for Galio, and helps with like the extending and prolonging of it.
Well, like what's
And
really neat is that like the Caitlyn Lux is like a really good oppressive like poke lane, right? And
yeah,
like a couple people have said this over the tournament, like whenever it's gotten picked, is like, ooh, I wonder if they'll pick the counter of a Blitzcrank. Because it's true that like Blitzcrank is kind of one of the only things that can offset that oppressive poke nature. Because you can be like, okay, well, you're over there, come here, like immediately. And like, yes, there are other pull champs like Nautilus and stuff like that, but like Blitzcrank does it a bit better.
It creates kill lane versus poke lane. And kill lane versus poke lane is if the kill lane can go in before the poke lane can poke them down to low health to prevent it, then they win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I'm just saying that Lux died a lot.
Well, Lux is like the squishiest champion in the game, almost bar like Sona. Like,
no, I know, but like
playing,
it's good. Like they abuse, like they
having
made
played
use
a lot
of
of
the lane.
Lux, when you get hit by anything,
yeah,
your health bar just.
I know, but like I'm just saying, like it's like they did the thing, right? Because it's like we've seen a lot of times, NA or other, they pick like something that's good into it, and then they play as if it's not good into it, and like they play like, oh, I hope I don't lose. So it's like
my notes.
Go.
I said they did a level 1. They did invade level 1, and they made it work. And I'm like, hey, going by like tournament metrics, like I wrote this down like 2 minutes into the game. I was like, hey, North America did a level 1, and it worked. Are we gonna win this game now?
And they did. I think the best part is they just did a level 1 is that they never stopped doing plays. It was like always forward, like always be closing. And I wrote
and the
down,
vision was really solid from both teams. Even like
the vision. I was so impressed.
Like this game was great for vision. Like both teams were doing it properly, which was nice.
It was really incredible. I wrote down like the timestamps that you need to check out for. It's 15 and 25 minutes. The 15-minute check, FlyQuest was 2K ahead against by far what people thought were the tournament favorites. 100%.
Yep. Like people who went into their pick'ems and said top esports was going 6-0, no one would have laughed at that. Like that was like a fairly considered a fairly probable possibility like to happen.
Yeah.
So like
I kind of
again,
want to see Top just like destroy everyone the rest of the tournament, and then we can be like, yeah, Top Esports world champions. Only loss was to FlyQuest.
like honestly, I'm okay with that narrative. I want it kind of now.
Yeah, that would just be cool.
I think the only issue here is that FlyQuest failed to balloon leads very well.
Mm-hmm.
It took them a long time. By the 25-minute check, they were at a 5K lead finally, but after they had won a Baron fight that was so well set up. And they had 3-1 Drakes. Then they played the balloon. They played the manipulation with the Baron much better. And once they had Baron, then they started ballooning super well. And then they got the Soul, and then they got another Baron and closed super cleanly. Like this was a very clean game by FlyQuest.
Why isn't FlyQuest our number 1 seed?
Because the difference here is that TSM showed improvement that was consistent throughout, and FlyQuest showed very little difference in change and improvement.
Seb, just let me.
Yeah, if you switch TSM and FlyQuest in these groups, TSM still gets 06th, and FlyQuest probably beats G2 and everybody else.
Also, like, frig, man, Ignar. Love the dude. Holy shit. Like, I love him.
My favorite was the caster was like, yeah, he needs to hook anybody but Urgot. And then he hooks the Urgot, and then he bursts the Urgot. And he's like, oh, okay, I guess you can hook the Urgot.
Yeah, it's like, oops, shows what I know. And the one other criticism I have is that I think that there were a couple times where they sent like 3-4 people top lane, and they didn't really do anything with that. I mean, FlyQuest, like they didn't do too much in response to the fact that 4 people were top lane. They did do like I know one time they got a drag off of it, I believe, and stuff like that. But I just feel like it might have been better, like a better performance, if they abused the fact of like, okay, Soul's getting dove now, let's get something out of this type of thing.
I think they did a lot of setup for what they were going to plan to do, and I think this is a good attempt at like showing teams that are always punishing and always doing something and not just doing setup are harder to read in attempts of what they're going to do. So like a comparison is Damwon Gaming does very little time to set up, despite the fact that they have pretty damn good setup for all of their neutrals. But you don't know what they're necessarily going to do next, or they're harder to read for what they're going to do next because their foot is never off the pedal.
Yeah.
FlyQuest, you can tell when they're like easing up a bit, doing setup, and then making sure that they could do something, and then they were very aggressive.
Yeah.
You could kind of read what they're going to do. And I think it's the difference maker in this tournament. How easily can you apply what you're trying to attempt, and B, how easily is it for us to read how you're going to do it?
That's fair.
I also want to use this as a comparison because this game ended in 30 minutes.
Yep. Number 1 team to win got beat by North America in 30 minutes.
And people were saying, "Oh, it's fine. North America's Chinese kryptonite," and you're like, "But that
the hell? Get out of here!"
That's not a narrative. This has been the case forever. It used to be Korea and Europe were the top 2, and then China was like down below, and then Europe became the team that was worse than North America. Only recently, in the last 4 or 5 years, has it been like, oh, North America's the worst one. And even then, 3 years ago, it was Korea that was the 4th place team.
Oh, that was a year. I liked that year. Can we go back to that year? That was like a pretty good year.
No, it was not a very good year either.
I liked it because we weren't the lowest of the low anymore, Seb.
No, we were only second lowest to the low.
Hey, but it was on top of Korea, which felt great.
I'm going to repeat a meme that CLG did in Spring Split. We got one higher than Team Liquid, and then somebody's like, but what did it cost? Everything.
Yeah.
Being one better than the worst is not a metric.
All right. Are we gonna go to Unicorns FlyQuest?
Yeah, I don't think there's much to talk about this game. This game is loony as hell.
It's just very nice.
Yeah.
Unicorns versus FlyQuest. FlyQuest, bring it back. Unicorns on blue side. First pick a Graves into a Twitch Cassidon. Interesting. And then they round out their draft with a Malphite Lulu. FlyQuest first pick a Jin Lilia, followed by a Renekton, and they round out their draft with a Vayne Blitzcrank. Pretty crazy. Pretty weird, in my opinion.
I'm gonna say PoE straight up told No Man's, hey, I am 100% better than you in like 4 classes.
And essentially showed it. Power of Evil
Yep.
ended the game 11-1 and 2
against No Man's Cassidon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The one pick people are like, don't let this guy get this pick, and he's like, I'm gonna pick Vayne. You're gonna have to deal with it.
So good.
And I don't think there's much to talk about in terms of strategy. FlyQuest's composition should have lost 100% to this. 100%.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Think about it. Like in terms of scaling on UOL, in terms of pacing and tempo control, UOL, hard engage, UOL, disengage, UOL. Like all of the options that exist here. Oh yeah, FlyQuest had what's it? 1, 2, 3 AD options into a Malphite.
Yep.
So much of this is like FlyQuest. You're trolling, right?
All
Trolling.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the Malphite did build a tier though, so it's a bit weird.
Why? Okay. I think it's basically just the Cassidon took a bunch of damage at level 1, and I was like, okay, you just recall, accept the fact that you're going to be down, like lose at least a wave of CS, and get back. But instead of saying like, okay, I'm going to be minus a wave of CS, he goes, no, I'm going to stay at 150 health.
I was like, FlyQuest has a 20-minute timer here. They need, and I said they need a minimum of a 6K lead or they lose.
Mm-hmm.
And I wrote the 20-minute check. They have a 9K lead. I'm like, well, I guess FlyQuest wins. And then that's it. That's all I wrote. I didn't write anything else after this. This was happenstance. There was Twitch had a win condition that was progressing, but that was it. And if you only have one of your 4 win conditions that were super obvious on pace, that's not a win condition. And FlyQuest had great wave manipulation. I think had almost didn't have every single Drake, but had like really good Drake set up.
And we had Ignar on Blitzcrank again.
I was just like, this game, I was like, well, this is your chance to show that you're not an actual joke.
Oh, I don't think they're a joke. They made it to groups.
Yeah, but so did LGD, and LGD struggled.
Anyway.
Team Liquid was the only team going out of planes, going to groups that was like, yeah, this is a team that definitely deserved to be in groups.
Mm-hmm.
And then PSG making into groups, I was like, there's some questions, but like, there's definitely something here. And then PSG and Team Liquid both showed in groups, I mean, late more than anything else, but better late than ever, that yeah, they deserve to be in groups. LGD and UOL, on the other hand, however, not so much.
All right.
And
do we get the last thing over once you're done your point?
I think one more thing is that UOL didn't deserve to be in groups from their lack of respect.
Oh shit.
The same thing as like your issues with G2. The difference here is G2 had shapen up and shown more respect in the latter half of their group stage. And I hope that sticks. If not, then I think they're gonna just straight up get dumpstered on more than just getting an 0-3.
Last one?
Yeah, we'll use the last one as a case study from the top versus Fly and the DRX versus top.
DRX versus top. DRX on blue side, first pick. Oh, and by the way, top wins this. DRX first picks Caitlyn into a Kindred Galio. And then they round out their draft with a Ornn Bard. Top Esports first pick a Ash Graves and then followed up with an Orianna. And then in the last phase, they pick a Lulu Vladimir. Lulu support, really popular today. It shows up in almost all the games.
Yeah, Lulu is a 5-role flex.
Well, you're not gonna put it in jungle.
It's only been 3 so far.
Yeah, no, but it can be played in jungle and ADC. This is one of those things that it can definitely be done. I don't recommend putting Lulu jungle.
Okay.
Don't do it, please. Nobody actually do that. You're gonna lose very difficultly. But it is something that is done. This was one of those things. I used to complain a lot about Yordle champions because Yordle champions could be played in every role and no one can say anything about that. Please give me a Yordle champion you can't play in every role.
I mean, I don't like it
Rumble.
that Teemo can, but
no, you can jungle Rumble.
You can't ADC Rumble.
Yeah, but
why not?
ADC all the time.
Pardon?
Mage is ADC all the time.
Well, then he's not. That's just a mage in the bot lane. It's not the ADC.
Yeah, you just build, your Leandries, whatever.
So what I'm saying is that you can
put
Yordle in every lane.
Yeah,
that's
fine.
Any role that you have there, Yordle goes.
Mm-hmm.
Veigar jungle.
Yeah, you can Veigar jungle. You can Karthus jungle. You can Veigar jungle in almost the exact same method.
Okay, let's get away from solo queue and let's talk about this game.
Great. So I gotta say, DRX had the winning composition here.
Okay.
100%. Right, and they had the scaling options. They had the engage options. They had everything here, and Top had it so much more complicated. So I wrote here specifically the notes that I took. Top, very strong comp at all stages, but lack engage, and DRX have a strong engage and disengage. There's a slight little bit of anti-synergy and takes time to ramp, but they still have the advantage in scaling.
Mm-hmm.
And
sure,
I was here going, and I remember LS tweeting about this, going DRX has no clue how to play their composition here. At any given point, they should have had the go button at 20 minutes. And they didn't. This was hilarious, given that at 14 minutes, they had 4 marks on Kindred. They were ahead of their win conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, they had poor setups for their intra games. Again, another trade. And Top just took the lead by the time the 25-minute mark hit in. Because this game was even for 25 minutes in a game where DRX had control of the tempo and nothing with it.
And it just got cracked open, basically.
It was 24 minutes before a kill went through. Where one of the composition has 3 forms of engage versus 0.
Yep.
And they lost the 3 kills.
So I was like, yeah, DRX is only minus 2k gold with a level 17 Ornn. In theory, they're winning this game at this point.
Yeah.
And then, by the end of the game, it's like, okay, so DRX, they're stronger with their alts per se. So the Ornn alt, the Bard alt, the Galio alt, the Kindred alt, right? These all can change the course of a team fight per se. They're all really, really big cooldowns, right? Between those 4 alts especially. And the end game fight was they completely whipped Ornn alt, they completely whipped Bard alt. The Galio didn't alt anything, the taunted at nothing. It's okay, well, they lose. And that's what happened. They burned all of their cooldowns and none of them did anything. Cool. I missed every skill shot.
I could not believe how absolutely inept DRX was here. This is
it's unfortunate.
DRX game plan looked like nothing, given a compositions whose win conditions are super obvious. I could get somebody who plays League on a casual basis 1 time a week, doesn't watch any professional game, show them the 2 compositions, and you go like, which composition do you think will win at like 20 minutes? And they'll say DRX's comp wins at 20 minutes, barring any intricacies of attempts at anything, because it's so much easier to execute on. I don't think DRX is getting out of their quarterfinal games, not barring the fact that they were drawn into a really shitty quarterfinal draw. But because I don't think it mattered who they were going to go up against. Honestly, I would have preferred FlyQuest going. FlyQuest, I would have been like, has a stronger chance.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Makes you sad.
It does. Because a lot of people are excited for Chovy, just Chovy.
Yeah.
Who wants to win Deft a world championship, which I don't think he deserves.
Well, with that, we move on to what are the groups now? We move on to what is the end of groups. We now have the brackets for quarters that are figured out. Oh,
before we do that, how we evaluate flying UOL?
Oh God. Okay.
Just on a quick glance here.
Yeah.
I gave FlyQuest a B+, and I gave UOL a B-.
I gave UOL a B-, and I gave FlyQuest an A-, actually.
I was close to giving FlyQuest an A- because I was like, draft B, vision A-, execution A-, teamfight B+, and it was like, it gave me the score right between A- and B+. I was like, but I gave them a B+ because they didn't execute it as consistently as I wish they did.
Yep.
I have FlyQuest A- UOL at a C.
Oh shit!
Wow, what the heck?
I had expectations for UOL.
Oh yeah, you're
true.
They're gonna get out.
And then they go doing this.
What really killed their score for you?
Well, I mean, their vision wasn't that great. I mean, their like their execution. Yeah, it's like even like a C in execution because like they're just trying to fight things despite whatever else is going on.
Yeah,
per se.
But
So they're just like, yeah, we're gonna fight this. So like, doesn't matter if the enemy team has like great vision set up and like knows exactly what's going on, and it's like doesn't matter if the enemy team is playing a great disengage comp. People did into them a lot who can just kind of like counter their engage options and stuff. You know, they're like, yeah, we can start a fight. It's like, okay, they have full vision set up. They have the Mikhails on the support. Like, how what are you engaging with? Like, how are you getting in there, right? Like, they're kind of just relying on like, yeah, we can play Kassadin and outplay and stuff. And it's like, oh.
I think that's the thing is that their execution, I think, is fine. I think it's their drafts that are bad. That's what mostly suffered it for me. Also, Connor, just to point it out, at the end of it, you predicted the exact score NA finished with.
The 6 and 12.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, yeah, 6 and 12. It's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah. But given the performance, it would have been reasonable if they ended in 8 and 10.
Sure, but
they would have been out of groups for both of those North American teams. But
that's what I wanted to say there. So looking at that just for a split second, since we're talking about NA, so both teams finished 3 and 3. Looking at these groups, saying, okay, to get out, you kind of need that 4 and 2, right? Either team would have got out with 4 and 2. So in order to get that, you have to 2-0 the 4th place team, right? You got to not lose a game to the weakest team, and you have to win, in theory, win a game off each of the other 2 teams.
Yep.
For example, let's say that's how you get into groups. So Team Liquid won a game off everybody. They got the upsets they needed to, per se, if that's what you want to call them. They just, they lost the game to Machi. They lost a game to the weakest team. It's that consistency, right? So like, FlyQuest, it's okay. They didn't lose to UOL, great, and they stole a game off top. They just needed to steal one of the games off DRX, right? That's what we're saying. Like, they needed to be They got the more difficult upset.
Yep.
So that's the difference there. So I think both of those teams are going back to it, saying like, hey, if neither of those two teams changes a player for next year, I'm probably fine with that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's very easy to say both of those two teams were one game away from it, right? Like, okay, FlyQuest, we took a game off you well. We got to finals both year regionally. Like, yeah, we're happy with this, right? Like, let's.
I think it's an incredible run.
Mhm.
Given that, and people are going to be keeping on being soured by TSM. And that's because TSM, I think, needs to just revamp everything except for Speaka personally, but we've already had that conversation. I mentioned this because then you got the bonus point, leaving the score currently after groups are done at 25 for Connor, 22 for me, and 20 for Josh. Still close, still within reach distance.
Yep, it's competitive. If I may, next year I want to see our Worlds teams be FlyQuest, Team Liquid, Golden Guardians.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I
Oh,
want to see next year.
please. Golden Guardians. I wanted them. Okay. This would be like a post Worlds episode. I'm sure, but like Golden Guardians, like they had the stuff.
That's what I want to see. I'm glad you agree with me.
Yes. Closer is amazing. Love them.
So with that, I also want to make a eulogy for Europe. As they survived the week either.
Everyone is like, it's weird. It's all the people posting stuff like, oh yeah, they set it up again so that G2 just like wins their side and then just gets 3-0 in the finals. And it's like,
that's bold of you to assume.
I mean, I would not be happy with that, but
I don't think if this was last year and this is the brackets that we had for G2, I'd have been like, all right, I can see that. Not this year.
All right, are we getting predictions in then for the brackets?
So what are your immediate thoughts on brackets right off the bat?
Well, we should talk about the brackets because no one knows what the brackets are yet because we keep stopping me. No, we haven't said it in the show yet.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
I keep trying to say them and we keep saying no.
If you're watching this far, you probably have an idea what's going on, but we'll say them anyway.
Top Esports versus Fnatic, Suning versus JD Gaming, Gen.G versus G2, Damwon versus DRX. So we've got China taking out China and Korea taking out Korea.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a very likely Korea versus China final.
I also agree with this.
Yep.
I don't think it's even any realistic predictions is probably that. Any EU fan. Okay, so I know that a lot of people are like, yo, the NA fanboys are delusional as hell. But I've seen more EU fans extra delusional going, oh, this is an all EU finals. Let's go! Like, what? In what world? You have Fnatic against top. It's like a bare minimum. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So, anywho. So, pick'ems have already put in through. I put my pick'ems, but the way that we're going to be doing the predictions is different because we're going to be doing them as the best of fives come along.
Okay.
I feel like that's more fair for predictions. No one can predict how far along perfectly. Granted, I think there's only one coin flip prediction to be made, and that's Damwon versus Top.
Sure.
So I will start off with this particular prediction because Pick'ems will force us to do one of these predictions here.
Sure.
Who, given the brackets, do you think will win the whole thing?
I still think Top's going to win.
Okay.
I don't know.
You don't know which of the teams that are in the brackets right now are going to win. Like,
I
give,
I
give
I
which one team do you think is most likely going to win?
I guess top. Yeah.
I put Damwon.
Okay.
Okay. And that's mostly because that's how the pick'ems is determined. I thought that would be fun to look at.
Yep.
So I think it'll be fun to talk about like each particular matchup, give like our brief thoughts about it, and then afterwards predict who you think is going to win and what score.
Okay.
So first one is Top versus Fnatic, and that's the first quarterfinals.
3-0 move on.
Hmm?
3-0 move on.
3-0 move on. We gotta give a little bit. Why do you think it's 3-0? I mean, other than every lane being outclassed, literally the only one that's even remotely a coin flip is the jungle. But at that point, what kind of pressures are you going to put in?
Mm-hmm.
The setups by Fnatic are almost non-existent. They're just based off of whether or not their lanes are ahead, which they're not going to be. They don't have early game pressures most of the time.
Yep.
I think that there's the possibility that it ends up 3-1. But I definitely do not think that Fnatic are winning. It's going to be Top Esports, but there's a chance it might be a 3-1 for Top.
So, Josh, are you putting your prediction of this best of 5 3-1 Top?
Sure, 3-1 Top.
Okay. And Connor, you and I are both in agreement that's 3-0 Top.
I'm not going to get back into this by agreeing with you guys.
That's fair. They definitely can lose a game. So, it's not.
Yeah, we seen them. We just saw them. They could bleed.
Yep.
Okay. Then we have Suning versus Gen.G, which is I'm excited. This is going to be the most exciting best of 5.
Mhm.
They didn't play against each other in their playoffs.
Yep.
This is the one where I think Suning deserved to be the second seed over Gen.G. And I think it's just because they're more consistent as a team and don't throw at 29 minutes on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
That, and I think I think this is also like the most even best of 5.
Sure.
Like it's super lopsided on all 3 of them except for this one.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. A lot of people are predicting G2, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, we'll get to that. That one I just don't understand. But I think the one thing that Suning I think has an advantage over Gen.G primarily is SOFM has a great control of pacing and tempo in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And just doesn't ever let go of the reins at any given moment. I think that Gen.G is still the more intelligent team out of the Chinese teams. The drafting is not the greatest, but their in-game execution is.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've had the strongest execution I've seen out of most of the teams.
Yep.
They're just minus the 29-minute mark, where they're iffy on the execution. But for the first like 20 minutes, this is one of the most solid execution that I've seen out of any of the teams. So I will personally, I think it's going to go 3-2 Suning.
I think it's going to be 3-1 Suning.
Yeah. That's what I was going with.
Do we still get points for predicting like the outcome, or only the score?
No, the outcome and the score.
Okay.
Don't know, because yes, I want to agree with you. Like Suning probably wins late games and stuff, but at the same time, like Sword Art has had some bad games per se.
Mm.
And I feel like Zoom probably beats Bin top lane. And like if Lumao helps out Kanavi and they do like 2-person invades and stuff, I feel like they probably can shut down SOFM.
Yeah, that's my
And
main.
SOFM is somebody who, when he gets collapsed on and when he gets counter juggled and these kinds of things, doesn't always react as well.
Yeah.
So, but is that enough to win 3 games though? Like, that's
Yeah,
the
because
thing.
Suning tends to be very flexible on the dime. Like,
Mhm.
I don't think I've ever seen any of their best of fives going away where they're like the same all the way through.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, Yagao looks best on like Zoe, but like, that's still playable. That's still a thing they can do.
So what's your prediction, Neri?
3-2 JDG.
Woo!
Connor going with the spice.
All right.
I can just see it happening, and like I know Suning's probably a stronger team, but like, yeah, that's what I'm going with.
Next, we have the one I think more the European fans are delusional about. We have Gen.G versus G2.
I don't want to talk about this. It's 3-0 Gen.G. I don't want to talk about it, please.
Here's my thing with it. If G2 is going to win, they're going to take it more seriously than any of their other games.
Mhm.
And they have to pick in a way that allows them to have absolute control over tempo and pressure at any given point that allows them to also be ahead of every role at any given point. And I could see that maybe in retrospect for mid and jungle duo, maybe. But I don't think that's going to be the case. If I was to really seriously think about it, my immediate gut reaction is 3-0 Gen.G. But it's the G2 factor. It's best of fives. G2 has only ever lost 3 best of fives.
I refuse. Seb, stop this.
Yeah, we don't want this.
So I'm putting them at 3-1. They rarely ever lose 3. No, actually, never mind. If they're going to lose, they only have ever lost 3-0.
Wow.
So, yeah.
I don't think history
Gen.G
means it's going to happen again, but
I say Gen.G 3-0. What about you, Connor?
all the people predicting G2 making it all the way to finals worry me. Because some of them actually know what they're talking about, to be fair. G2 is very strong individually, but I feel like I'm comfortable saying BDD is probably like arguably as good as Caps and can hold them in place. I'm gonna say that. I think that's enough for them to pull out the lead, even if it is like.
Okay. So
yeah, I don't want G2 to win.
none of us want G2 to win.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying, who are you predicting?
Gen.G.
And score?
3-2.
3. Oh, that's close.
Yeah.
All right. This last one's the same as the first one. I think it's not even a conversation topic. It's the literal finals of the Korean playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It's Damwon versus DRX. And given how we saw DRX finish their run,
Mm-hmm.
Damwon, I think, is just going to absolutely trounce them.
Mm-hmm.
They are cut above in every role except mid lane, and even then, it's not that much more. It's like even. They have always the control and pressure. They have smarter drafting and more flexible drafting, and have a better understanding of how their win conditions are pulled off. I just 3-0 Damwon.
I have 3-1, but yeah, similar reasons.
I
think-
also have it 3-1 as well. I think that they'll maybe drop a game, but 3-1 for Damwon.
Okay. Now, I would say, be given our predictions, what do we predict? But that's what the pick'ems are for.
Mhm.
And pick'ems, I think, always fuck people over because
Love it.
they're expecting to like view way far down in the future when metas change from best of 5 to best of 5.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's very interesting that we're going to probably get another Korea versus Chinese finals after it being since 2014 since we've seen one.
I think that's cool. I like it better when it's a region versus another region. I do not like it when it's like the same region, whether it's China, whether it's Korea. I
Well, we'll
I like
likely
it
see
when
that
it's region
in
versus
semis,
region.
but we'll see that in semis. So it's
I know, but still, I feel like when it's the same region versus themselves, even if they are the two best teams, I'd rather just have it be region versus
Yeah.
region.
it would have been cool to see Damwon FlyQuest, even if they lose that. It'd be like, okay, you know, but we're past that.
Mhm. It's mostly because like the stakes are like half gone, like the way I see it at least. Because like it's like,
Mhm.
oh, which region gets to claim the trophy? And it's like, oh, it's Rocks versus SKT. Well, Korea already gets the trophy, but which Korea? Like it's like,
But isn't it crazy that since it's been since 2014 since Korea and China met in the finals?
that is actually kind of nutty.
After
Yeah.
after Samsung versus Royal, which is now RNG,
Hmm.
it's been a Korea versus Korea final forever, with either a Europe or Chinese team in the quarterfinals facing off against a Korean team, and that's it.
Hmm.
And then in the last 2 years, it's been a Europe versus China final, which the first time it happened, people were like, "Oh, crazy," and
Hmm.
the second time was like, "Oh, expected."
Hmm.
Now it's likely not going to happen. I mean, unless G2 literally angers everybody.
I mean, that's always a possibility, technically.
Yeah. What happens if G2 wins Worlds this year?
I cry.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's a storyline I'd be happy with either.
Especially after the absolute disrespect and the fact that
Mhm.
the fact that Team Liquid almost kicked them out of groups. Yeah, I hope they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those are our predictions for the quarterfinals. We have up to 8 points possible after the quarterfinals. Uh, so let's see if there's any like huge shifts in
Are Fnatic making it to finals?
or Fnatic making. So here's the thing. We all have the same predictions except for Connor predicted JDG over Suning.
Mhm.
Only difference is that some of us have different scores.
Mm-hmm.
Huh, who knows?
I put in my official pick'ems.
Yeah.
I did a second spicy thing.
Oh, what did
Nice.
you do? What's your second spicy thing for the official pickup?
Gen.G beating Damwon.
Oh.
What?
Well, we'll get
Excuse.
into that next week. We'll get into that next week if that's the result that happens, you know?
Oh.
Yeah.
All right, that's fair. Well, with that, how about all of you? What do your pick'ems look like? What are your predictions for the quarterfinals? Are you as upset as we are about FlyQuest barely being eliminated? Let us
Sad.
know.
Sad.
But
We really appreciate all of you who watch. Our next episode will come out on Friday. We are going to be doing this after every second best of 5, so that we have a little bit more to talk about and aren't
Yep.
just small chunkier episodes. Um, and it also helps with our scheduling. The last week was crazy,
Mm-hmm.
and if I remember, all of you guys are correct with this. We're going to be watching this live for the finals.
That's to be determined.
That's to be determined.
Maybe even more than that if you want to do casting. Right?
Yes, we'll see. Well, it's still in the works.
Yep.
But if anything, I will definitely be doing a live myself personally when the finals come up because that's going to be epic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you again all for watching. Leave a like and subscribe. We'll see you all on Friday.
Peace.
Bye.